Welcome to the Free Cities podcast. My name is Timothy Allen, and this is the official podcast of the Free Cities Foundation. Hello and welcome to episode number 95 of the Free Cities podcast. Well, greetings from me, from the sunny British countryside. I'm back from my trip to the Great Steppe. Well, to be more precise, Mongolia. And to be even more precise, the Altai Mountains. Actually, a lot of people fall into the trap of thinking that Mongolia is a great vast grassland, when in fact it's not. It's only a third grassland. The rest is equal portions of mountainous regions where I've been and desert. The Gobi, to be precise. Fun fact of the day, Mongolia is also the least densely populated country in the world. Believe it or not, Mongolia is the size of Western Europe with, wait for it, 3.5 million people in the population. Unbelievable, I know. And add to that, 70% of those 3.5 million people live in cities. You can really understand these statistics when you fly over the country in a plane. Miles and miles of landscape, completely void of the human touch. Anyway, back to today's show. And there's no void of human touch. Boom, boom, great segue, Tim. What a consummate pro you are. I have for your listening pleasure today a returning guest, Pavla Karon. Pavla's an entrepreneur and freedom maximalist who co-runs their family business, but outside of that, she's all about family and personal growth. And I know one thing, that whenever I meet up with her, we always have great chats, and this one is no exception. Topics discussed today include children, especially parenting methods and bringing up liberated kids. We also go into 21st century gender roles, feminism, socialism, stoicism, technology. The list goes on. Pavla's an old school voluntarist with a wealth and depth of experience in the realm of liberty and, more importantly, staying free. If you like this one, you can expect another one in the not too distant future, since we'll both be connecting again in Prague in November for Liberty in Our Lifetime, which is, of course, the Free Cities Foundation's must-attend conference. If you revolve in these kind of social circles, it's the one date in your calendar that never disappoints. The speakers list is increasing daily, and lucky old me will get to record a long-form conversation with the majority of them while we're there in Prague. So look out for those in the future. Tickets available, as always, at libertyinourlifetime.org. Keep the sats coming too if you're a value for value streamer on Fountain app or the like. The Free Cities Foundation's strategic Bitcoin reserve is getting stronger every week. All links in the show notes. And finally, last but not least, my duty to you, of course, as a loyal listener, is to instruct you, please, to just sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Pavla Karon. Say something.
Hello. I'm gonna open my bottle of water.
Do you not want that one? I brought you one
microplastics, thank you.
Oh shit. Okay.
Trying to kill me.
Microplastics. Go on. Well, we better start on microplastics then.
Sure, let's do it.
I've given everyone microplastics on this podcast. Is that right?
You're sabotaging everyone. That's great. No, I do occasionally drink from plastic. It's fine.
I know, but come on, tell me then. I think I. Do you know what I saw on Instagram the other day? Someone was talking about plastic chopping boards, which have always been an absolute pet hate of mine.
Yeah.
But you really, I mean, that's obvious. There really are microplastics coming off every time you cut the bloody thing.
Yeah.
Where are the microplastics in this bottle of water then?
Well, probably not right now, but you don't know how it's been stored, and the temperature before, it could have been in a hot room, and that's when they start to, and you don't know how long also. And it could have been bottled under really hot temperature, so that's when they leak in. And it's not just the microplastic, but the plastic. It has, the BPA, the bisphenol A, and BPB, BPC, all those other things, which are hormonal disruptors.
Are they?
Yeah, so it messes with your system. So the European Union started regulating against BPA, actually, but there's other bisphenols, not just the A. And even with, disregarding studies, because I actually don't trust any studies anymore, but does this look like the vessel from which we should be taking, our water? Just kind of common sense. Like, I trust stainless steel intuitively. It feels right to me. I trust glass. And I don't trust this stuff. So if I have another option, I will opt for that. If I'm thirsty or my kids are thirsty, am I going to drink water from plastic? Yes, it's fine.
Fair enough. I think at least don't buy a plastic water bottle. That would be stage one, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
But presumably stainless steel is also man-made. How do we know that isn't giving you some kind of weird...
It's non-reactive with our system. Like, there's nothing that's leaking from it, especially if you have the 18 by 80 stainless steel. That's like the grade that is considered the safest. That's what they make scalpels from, medical equipment. Because you can also get pretty crappy stainless steel because it can be mixed with, it can have a higher ratio of zinc in it, nickel, all the weird things that we don't want. Okay. So especially when it comes to things that like we're eating off of, that's where I prioritize like doing a little bit of research and just like maybe spending a little more money just to like be on the safe side.
Fair enough. Okay, well, I've probably just killed everyone, haven't I, on this on this podcast? But I mean, the thing is, look, I want to offer people water when they come, at least, and a coffee. It's the easiest way. I think the alternative I could have bought a jug instead. There was no jug here, and glasses.
Yeah,
right.
But then you're running tap water, which is another, a whole other bag of bad news.
Well, yeah, that's a good point, actually. How do I do it then? Because any water would have it's not like I can pour this into another vessel. It would be a waste, wouldn't it?
Right. So the quality of tap water, that's a big topic. In Prague, we have good tap water. But what does that really mean? It means they don't add fluoride to it like they do in the US still. The reason is it prevents cavities, which is also very questionable. Also lowers children's IQ and has all sorts of other problems, yet they continue to do it. Here, they stopped doing that in the 80s, so no more fluoride in the water. But, of course, it is not H2O only, right? There's all sorts of other crap in it, and that's not even the water. That's like also it's about the pipes. And whenever I see them replacing the pipes in the streets of Prague, and I see the old pipes, and they go from like really big width to super, super thin because of all the growth and garbage and residue that's in there, and that's what you're drinking. So
don't they use plastic pipes now as well or not?
Still, those are covered with like gunk.
I know, but what I mean is there's also microplastics with plastic pipes.
Yes,
presumably.
probably. Still better than what they used to use, what was the fall of Roman Empire, right? They said it was like asbestos in the pipes, in the drinking water. That's
really?
one of the like conspiracy theories that it led to like cognitive decline of the whole population.
Asbestos in Roman pipes?
Yes.
I thought asbestos was a man-made thing, no?
Yes.
How does it appear naturally then?
I don't know.
But it was in the Roman pipes.
That is one of the like theories, yeah.
Conspiracy theories.
Yes.
Well, the fluoride one, fluoride is a byproduct of the aluminium industry, as far as I know. And like, if you want to go the conspiracy route of that, they have this product, this byproduct, and they didn't know what to do with it. And someone funded some dodgy research on cavities. And it may even be true. I know for one thing that, I won't say who it is, but someone I know who's a doctor swears by fluoride and says, it's crap. The science shows that it reduces cavities or whatever. But when I tried to find that out, I struggled. And it was almost a case of, well, when you see a place that adds fluoride to the water, you see less cavities. But that could be on account of something else as well. Right. You absolutely don't know.
Correlation, not causation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does seem like, I mean, hey, here's where I'm doing it right then. We've got our own spring at our farm. We have our own spring. We had at our last house, we had our own spring as well. The water, it's beautiful. It tastes sweet.
Yeah.
And we only drink water at home. Well, or do we? Yeah. My daughter got a soda stream for her birthday, and so she can put she can carbonate it now. But I'm just thinking we're probably doing something wrong there. That's probably bad for us, is it?
I also have a soda stream because I love sparkling water, and I always tell myself, it's in that bottle for just a really short period of time, and it's cool water that you put in, you carbonate it, and then I pour it into
exactly. It doesn't stay in the plastic soda stream bottle for
exactly,
long.
And it's not heated.
But is carbonating water bad for you? I don't know.
I don't think so. I've never heard that said. I know for myself how it feels in my body. I enjoy carbonated water sometimes. Sometimes I feel like I really want it, and sometimes I just want flat water.
I wonder if it's going to affect our carbon scores in the future.
Most likely. It's going to be banned in 5 years.
The reason I say that, I've just come out of a very heated discussion about social credit systems and carbon scores and all this kind of stuff.
Like somebody was advocating for that?
No. Warning against it, for sure.
You're right.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we decided we were going to talk about children.
Yes.
And bringing them up free. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a topic that if I think about that, if there was one thing that I wanted to change in this world, it would be nothing to do with governments or laws or taxes. It would simply be the way we relate to our children and all children, really. I think it's the number one thing we can do to make a difference in the future. Because I will put it to you that most children are not brought up free. They don't even understand what true freedom really is. And we're setting ourselves up to fail with future generations.
Okay, our children don't know what freedom is. So give me the context of that. Like, where are our kids not understanding what freedom is? I mean, look, I'll put this to you. If you go to a beach or, a big field and you let the kids get out of the car, they do know what freedom is because they run like nutters, much more than adults do. We don't look, I mean, I do every now and then. Dogs do as well. I don't know if you notice that. We're both dog owners. So they kind of do know what freedom is. So what do you mean?
You have a great point that they have this natural desire for freedom, right? It's actually inherent in that when a baby is born, it is completely free. I guess what I meant to say is that over time, we stifle that in them, because a lot of parents would say, don't run so fast, you're going to fall, be careful, and don't go crazy around here. And if you don't, then that's amazing. But I am around children constantly. I mean, I'm a mother to 2 daughters now. They're 4 and 10. And plus, I have a house full of kids constantly because my older daughter goes to a community school, which is in our building, right? You were at my house last time. And downstairs is a school, and we have pretty much open door policy. So I am constantly surrounded by kids, and we're in a very children-centric house. And I also see their parents, and I see that parents have this natural tendency to control kids. And a lot of that makes sense, because when the baby is born, it is completely dependent on you, and you have to provide for every single need of it. So you control what it eats, how it dresses, what it does when it sleeps. But as the children grow up, a lot of parents hold on to that. Questioning, what are you wearing today? Don't need this, don't need that, don't do this, controlling their free time, and even controlling, which I think is the kind of most insidious, most problematic, controlling their emotions. For example, typical, like, don't cry, don't be sad, there's nothing to be sad about, there's nothing to be scared of, you're fine. And my personal favorite, you're okay, when the kid clearly isn't.
Well, you've got daughters.
Yeah.
I've got daughters as well, but I've got a son, and teaching my son to not cry, it seems to be an important aspect of the journey of a man. And I'm almost certain we'll disagree on this, because I think we have different ways of parenting. But going back to the freedom of kids and controlling, I think, here's my take on it. So it's about freedom and boundaries, right? And as a dad or as a mum, you are creating boundaries for your kids. And I think that's the healthy part you were talking about, maybe, about the rules. My journey with children appears to be that this is what I do. I create boundaries for them in the beginning, and then slowly on their route to becoming sort of 16, 18, 21, those boundaries get loosened and let go of, or they push through them. And as they take on the responsibility of freedom. Does that sound familiar or wrong or right?
Yeah, I think that sounds all right. I mean, as long as, the boundaries are kind of not imposed in an authoritarian way, I think that makes all the difference, because you can have a very gentle boundary that you explain to the kids and you kind of agree with it on them. That's my approach. I try to have consensual and collaborative process of setting boundaries, as opposed to saying bedtime is 10 p.m. and that's that. And I don't care what you think. So there can be totally different ways of setting boundaries, and one I find not good and one I find fantastic and necessary. Because yes, we all need boundaries. It is really like, it gives us also a sense of safety, because children, their primary need is for safety. And that's what we achieve with giving them these healthy boundaries, and also showing them that they cannot be transgressed, because we are parents, we have the responsibility over the kids. But all of that, I think, can be achieved in a really kind of freedom-oriented way, where you explain, you take them along with you on that journey, and you make them collaborate with you on that. And if they want to override the boundaries, if it's very, very, so very important to them, then I say, all right, let's talk about this. Like, when should bedtime be? When do you think is good for you? What feels good for your body to go to sleep? And if they bring me a strong case, and my 10-year-old daughter does that very often, then I'm okay with letting go of that. I really trust that to a large extent they know what's better for them more than I do. Because Tim, I barely know what's good for myself, and that's the truth. As an adult, I barely know that.
I don't believe that.
Honestly, how many times have you made a decision for yourself and it just wasn't the best? Like drinking, too much coffee in a day, or eating something that wasn't so great, or maybe making a career choice that turned out like not perfect. Like, do you always know what's great for you? Because I don't.
Well, I don't. Or I know. I always know what's great for me. The question is, how much research did I put into that decision? And I am one of those people that's constantly, I think if anyone who wasn't like me just had the ability to sort of like transpose themselves into my mind for like 5 minutes, I think what they would experience is a computer that's constantly scanning around, evaluating things. Mm-hmm. It's a bit like, it's not like, like the threat. What's the threat? What's the best route through here? How do we, like in this conversation, where do we go with this? Where's the best things to focus on? And it's constantly going. And I don't know whether everyone's like that or not. I certainly meet a lot of people that don't seem to be like that. But I do think things through very deeply always. And as a result, when I make a decision, it's normally quite obvious, but it doesn't mean I make bad decisions. However, my personality is developed to see the silver lining of everything. So even there's no such thing as a bad decision, really. I mean, I've made some horrendous decisions on paper in my life, but I can still see in hindsight, okay, it was a good learning experience. It was, whatever it led to, you screw up and lose a load of money. And a lot of people do this. A lot of entrepreneurs go completely broke. In the moment, it's like, wow, we really screwed up here. But they probably come back stronger and harder, and lessons learned and all that kind of stuff, right?
100%. And I mean, that's because you have an optimistic disposition, which is a great asset in life, and that's amazing. So I'm very much a silver lining person also. That being said, I've made a lot of very dubious decisions in my life, okay? And I own that. And I do probably on a daily basis. Like, have I lived a perfect day today, everything 100%? No. And do I always know what's best for me next? And because I don't, how could I possibly know what's best for my kids?
Well, yeah, but then how could they possibly know what's good for themselves?
Well, how could they possibly know if they can't make the decisions for themselves and live the natural consequences of their decisions? Like small example of, a very young child doesn't want to wear a jacket, right? All right, let them go out and it's going to be really cold and then they will see for themselves. But if I force them to put the jacket on, they don't have the lived experience, and there's nothing as instructive as the lived experience in our lives. So I think freedom is giving them that and letting them fail in small ways. They're not going to try jumping out of the window, right? But they wouldn't want that anyway because they have their natural instincts. And actually, if we take every decision for them, we're divorcing them for those natural instincts also.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I was thinking, well, there's a limit to how much I want my kids to make their own decisions.
Certainly there's a limit. Yeah, my level of that is very high. I will let them do like almost anything, except for when it comes to, of course, like these life-threatening things, right? I want to keep them physically safe. That's a big one, including when they're fighting. And when I see they're really hurting each other, then I will interfere, but not before that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I let my kids fight, and then it always becomes a topic of conversation. And as a result, they hardly ever fight, actually. When they do fight, they really mean it. And I quite enjoy seeing them fight, because I want them to be spunky as well. I want them to actually I want them to have that side of themselves.
100%, because anger is also, can be a very helpful emotion. It's certainly a healthy emotion that we don't want to cut off. Just like sadness and just like tears, I feel like that's why I'm always with the, don't be sad, don't cry. I'm like, no, like cry. I'll hold you as long as you need to cry. And then when you're done, we'll move on. Because we need to experience the full arc of an emotion. And I think if we as kids didn't get that, we are also afraid of some emotions as adults. We find that anger is very scary, must be suppressed. Sadness must be Prozac or Xanaxed away. Those things are scary because we never got to fully live them. That's why I think it's so important that we give our children to do that.
Once again, I gotta talk about the difference between men and women and boys and girls here, because it is. I mean, I have 2 daughters and a son, and I'm a son, obviously, and so I know I'm bringing them up completely differently. Really? Yes, 100%. They're very different. I'm not under any illusions that they will be competing in the same arena when they're older, because there are some stark differences between them. And it's funny, I think it was last night, I saw a clip on whatever, Instagram or something. I should probably check this is true, of course, but I'm going to just go ahead and say it was some research that someone had done where they had young girls and young boys, like toddlers that were crawling, and they put the mum on the other side of a barrier and let the kids go to their mum. And on average, the girls got to the barrier, sat down and started crying, and the mother came to them. And on average, the boys went to the barrier and started trying to climb over it to get to the mum. Do you think there's any truth in that? Do you think that's but you haven't got, you must deal with some boys though.
Yeah, constantly I deal with boys, yeah. So what you're saying is that boys are more natural problem solvers, and the girls default to their emotions to kind of solve.
Or default to, I mean, like for the classic, I've said this, I think I even said this the last time we spoke, but there's a very funny meme that is, if you're a guy, and a girl, when a woman breaks something, if she brings it to her girlfriend, she's looking for sympathy. And if she brings it to her boyfriend, she's looking for it to get fixed. Right. And I know but it's really true. Like that, I don't know. I hang out with a lot of girls that are like that anyway. It's the same kind of thing. It's like the boy is hardwired to try and climb to the top, to get to that top of the hierarchy, and the girl is hardwired to seek the kind of the help of her fellow women, kind of thing. And you could easily say it goes back to deep into our ancestry or something.
Yeah, I mean, definitely I'm not discounting the fact that there is biological difference between men and women, and men are generally more interested in things, women are more interested in people. 100%, I think that's true, although not in 100% of the cases, but broadly speaking, yes. I mean, at the same time, I would not deny young boys or young men their emotions, because I think everybody needs to understand what's happening in them when they're feeling sad, and just saying don't cry doesn't make the person suddenly not feel sad. It's like if you lose your job and you come home to your wife and she says to you like, don't be upset, just cheer up, it's fine. That doesn't make the feeling go away. It just alienates you from your wife, actually, because not only do you have the bad feeling, but you're also now alone with the bad feeling. Yeah,
that's a function of communication, right? Yes, 100% agree with you there, because I think for men, from my experience, when it comes to emotion and expressing emotion, your value is derived from your ability to control yourself, to be disciplined, because men can resort to violence much more dramatically than women, like we do, especially amongst each other. But it's more dangerous for a man to not be in control of himself, if you see what I mean. And, you know.
Absolutely. That's why I would think it's so important. And there's some studies that actually show that little boys are more sensitive and more deeply emotional than little girls. But I think because so often it's overridden, especially I know that in the generation of my parents, it was completely unacceptable for little boys to cry. And I think that we've done great disservice to those boys, because they grow to be those men that you just described that are not in control of that at all. And then they would lash out in anger or aggression because those emotions are so scary, because they've been told their whole life, don't feel that. You're not allowed to feel that.
How much do you know about Stoicism?
A little bit, yeah.
Because that
read
brings to mind
Marcus Aurelius and
right,
some
cool.
of those, yeah. Mm-hmm.
What do you think about the ideas of Stoicism then?
So the idea of Stoicism is that whatever happens outside of me should have no effect basically on how I feel inside, right? And that my kind of happiness, my inner world is my own.
Could be. I mean, I'm thinking. I'm thinking more in terms of. I can describe the features of a Stoic person. Then put it that way, because I consider myself quite Stoic, and that would mean, and it gets bad press recently because I'm not. Apparently, I'm not expressing emotions. I think a lot of people think Stoicism is stern, and non-expressive, etc., etc. And there is a component of it, I think, anyway, in my case, that is that. But how I see it is, as a guy, one of my duties as a man is to be a rock and a foundation for something, the family unit, the whatever. And as a result, I need to not allow my emotions to dictate how I respond to things. So I need to be able to evaluate things in an emotionless way as much as possible, because empathy is important, and you can't have empathy unless you're in touch with your emotions. So it's not just block the emotions out, stay in my head and try and work everything out. It's a combination of everything, and it takes a balanced experience of life, how but I do see it as an important role of men. And I think actually in the grand scheme of things, currently it's, we're living through that timeline where people think, oh no, men, come on, you should be revealing, you should be expressing yourself, you should be doing, I want to see your feminine side, blah, 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 and it's like, I don't actually think this is a good idea in the slightest, because you need someone who is Stoic, and because men are, I think, more predisposed to be Stoic, plus they have the strength to be Stoic, because, it's all very well being Stoic, but if someone challenges you, you need to be able to stand up for yourself as well.
Absolutely. And I think there's also a difference. I mean, if we bring it back to children, being completely Stoic while you're raising children is maybe tricky, because you're not modeling these emotions that they are feeling, because you have to take into account that children are born without a developed prefrontal cortex. That is, a Stoic needs their prefrontal cortex fully developed, which helps you regulate those emotions. It means you're not suppressing them, you're fully aware of them. I'm feeling anger, this anger is mine, I will not project it, right? That would be the Stoic response. So the awareness is there first. And the children do not have the hardware, the prefrontal cortex is not there. They're physically unable to do this. So It's not a feature. I mean, it's a feature. It's not a bug, right? In children. And we have to model to them that these emotions happen. You can let them pass and you can be okay. To only be stone-faced in the face of a child is actually, then their mirror neurons are not firing, right? They cannot kind of learn from your behavior. So you can help them to co-regulate by staying really calm, but you can also tell them, like, you're feeling angry now, and that's okay. We'll wait for it together to pass. We can take a deep breath, and then we can move on. That, I think, is unbelievably advantageous for children to have this kind of approach to labeling their emotions, because whatever you can name, you can manage, right? But if you tell them, don't cry, that means it's bad. Suppress it. And anyway you can't suppress it, it's going to bubble up somewhere else, probably as aggression, which is, I think, the problem of bullying in a lot of schools is mostly from that.
So it's about awareness. And so you think it's funny, I was talking to someone else in Prague about awareness a few days ago, and we both acknowledge awareness as a thing. It's a thing. It's a if you think your mind is something, then awareness is also something that coexists with this. And the first time you get the experience of awareness, it becomes apparent. And a lot of people, as far as I can tell, don't actually have that experience. They've never watched their own mind, for example. I think even using the word watch is wrong here, because watch implies it's something here. It's not. It's more experience. Like awareness is a passive experience, isn't it?
And it's a separation, right? The watched and that which is watching. So it reveals that duality inside you. I think a great way to help children with that is to tell them not you are angry, but you are feeling anger, because it also shines the awareness spotlight on that emotion. It kind of isolates it, and it makes it from that oceanic, completely overwhelming, scary feeling that floods their brain with stress hormones, cortisol, to something contained. You are feeling angry, you are feeling sad, not you are sad, because you're not that, right? There's a distinction. And they will not consciously understand that initially, but it takes 1,000 repetitions to grow into very emotionally resilient kids, not coddled kids. It's the opposite of that. They will have ownership of those emotions, they will understand them, and they will know that they are finite. Every emotion runs its course, and we can move on. And that is also like a huge strength to have that in your life, because I think the lack of awareness that you just described, that's what 90% of the population lives in every day. An emotion comes and they completely identify with it, right? They identify with anger, every single thought. There's not a shred of awareness, the watcher that sees it all.
I still, to this day, at age 52, I still tell myself sometimes this will pass. Like, I was making a film a few weeks ago, and I had a really big issue with something. I won't go into it, but it was a big enough issue to give me sleepless nights. And in those moments, I have to go into that feeling, because I know the alternative is to push it aside. And if I push it aside, all I'm doing is letting it come back another time. So I have to go into it. And when you go into it, it doesn't feel good. And I know this from experience, it will change. And sure enough, 24 hours later, you're onto something else. It might come back, it might not. And I think that's the challenge. And like I say, I've never grown out of talking to myself like that, because it's true. There's no there's no such thing as someone who, I don't think anyway, likes feeling, angry or something. I mean, there are people, but I'm not sure they actually really enjoy being.
I do think that some people have that addiction, like stress addiction and drama addiction. I can see that clearly. And actually some people I know personally that they thrive in those, because these hormones are also addictive, and the heightened sense of like intensity and urgency, it can be quite seductive, especially if that's an environment that you grew up in and you never had a really truly safe environment where you could be completely regulated with your nervous system. You look for dysfunctional relationships because you think that drama and stress is real attachment, right? If you never had parents that made you feel safe, well, how could you know what to look for? So I think that some people can be addicted to that. I think it can also be overcome. And I think what you said is really powerful. This too shall pass. That's a really helpful mantra from you also. I also find it really helpful to know that I have a choice. I can think about this problem and I can completely spin out of control, right? Especially at night. We all have that, going to sleep when there is no other real stimulus. The mind kind of defaults to like, what is the problem and what are the worst case scenarios? But my choice is also to imagine like, what if everything works out perfectly? What is the best case scenario? Everything's going to be fine. Or to just not think about it for the moment at all, to shelve it. Because I know after 10 p.m., I have no useful thought. And that's the truth. The thoughts are just, kind of dysfunctional because they go to the little problems and they nitpick them to like oblivion, and everything is so much worse. And usually when I wake up in the morning, like I already feel better. Like, I don't know why the night is, because we're in the cave, the predators were around, just a dangerous time. That's why kids are afraid of the dark. And we tell them, don't be afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of. But we shouldn't. The right response is you're afraid. Like you're feeling fearful right now. And that's okay. I'm also scared at night sometimes. It's a normal emotion as well. All emotions are allowed in this realm.
That's an interesting thing, saying that no interesting thoughts come after 10 p.m. or no use. Would you say
no useful ones?
Useful ones.
No useful ones.
Don't
believe them.
I can see what you mean, though. But like in my case, going back to the problem I had recently, I managed to isolate what it was, and I still don't know whether this is something that needs to be resolved in me, because I was in pain because something didn't turn out the way I wanted to, on account of it wasn't my fault kind of thing, you know. Something wasn't as good as, like, I'm a kind of perfectionist, you know. When I put my mind to something, I make sure I do the best job I can. And that, as a result, when I work in a group, which often you have to in life, you have to work on a project together, I find it hard to accept the mistakes that other people make. And even knowing that I make mistakes, because it's the mistakes that affect the way you are interacting with this project as a whole, which make you think, oh, I could have been better, but that person did this or that person did that. And so the problem is me, obviously. The problem is my sense of perfection, which is absolutely fine. What I don't know is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because my sense of my perfectionism has spurred me onto all kinds of things that I never normally would have done. I know a lot of people in all the industries I've ever worked in, other people that didn't push it as hard as I did. I was always the last one. You know, when I was a photographer in London, you know, this is before digital photography. We had to get film back to the office and develop it. You know, it's that old-fashioned. And so you had a cut-off point where you had to leave whatever you were doing, because you had to get the film back to the office to develop it, to get it into the newspaper. And I was always the last guy, because I'm thinking I can still get a better shot. I can. You know, you're at a demonstration or something in the middle of London, and it's like everyone's gone, but I was still there. And I know, looking back now, what it was that drove me to do that. And it's not necessarily a good thing. It doesn't feel good. It's that it's half kind of, you can do better. I would
say it's like a fear-based behavior.
Could be, yeah.
Because, you know, probably, I don't know what your situation was growing up, but I would say that you were afraid of making mistakes. You're afraid of failing. So the perfectionism is to avoid
the feeling. Yeah, the one that I get the other night. Yeah, exactly. Right. I agree with that. And going back to kids, I've noticed where I've installed that in one of my kids, and
they're the greatest mirrors.
Yeah,
for children.
And it's a shame, because I've realised with one of my daughters, I've installed that same thing, the fear of putting their foot wrong, and it comes across in my parenting style as well. Like, because I'm quite authoritative, you know. I never say because I said so, but I do decide on a rule based on what I think is the best thing for the kids, and then I stick to it. And that almost becomes the boundary, and it is negotiable, but not much, because on the whole, these rules are based around 52 years of experience rather than like 10 years of experience. And I know you'll probably call me out on that, but yeah. So with one of my daughters now, I can see, right, I fucked that up. I screwed that bit up a little bit. I've installed this, you know, fear of getting it wrong in one of my daughters. I need to sort of work on letting this go.
Yeah, and you can. I mean, it's never too late. I think even if your parents at your age came to you and said, hey, I realized like I didn't do something perfectly, you know, it would still feel good to have that acknowledged. And I think with your daughter, you can just kind of flip the narrative around making mistakes, which is one of my personal favorite approaches, just to like come and celebrate mistakes. Like sometimes I ask my daughter, because she goes to a community school, I'm an unschooler by my disposition, but she chooses to go there. Not every day, sometimes no. And they do have like subjects. So she learns like Czech and math. And sometimes I ask her like, hey, what did you get wrong today? And she's like, this like dividing, like I just don't get it. I'm like, that's awesome. Like you got it wrong. Like it tells you like what to work on, and like high five her for
getting it wrong,
making a mistake. Because honestly, like where do we progress, you know, from mistakes? And if a mistake is something that scares you, you're not going to go there. Yeah. You're going to play it super safe.
Yeah. But there could be a flip side to that, which is glorifying mistakes then just becomes a life of making mistakes.
I don't know. I don't know that would really happen, because we want to succeed as humans. Like we have that drive. Like we want to get it right. It feels better. This just takes the fear away from the mistake, because you explain to the kids, like, that is the route to get to better, is through the mistakes, through making them, like, you're still on that way. And I share as often as I can, like, even if my kids are not there and I like spilled something, I'm like, hey guys, earlier I broke this beautiful bowl. Like, I really messed up, like, boo, you know, it happens to me all the time. Like, mistakes are totally human. And that's actually, like, also where I come from a lot, is like, apologize for my mistakes, because I get things right constantly with my kids. You know, I'm an imperfect human. And I make a point of it to tell them every day, listen, I raised my voice at you earlier. That was not okay. Like, I was stressed out. I was dealing with my own issues and I projected them onto you. It had nothing to do with you. I was tired and I apologize. I'm going to work on getting that better next time.
That's very hard for a man to do, I think. I have done that, but it takes a lot more willpower.
What do you think would happen if you did that with your kids?
I have done it. I did it recently.
And how does it feel when you do it?
It doesn't feel good as a man. It doesn't. I mean, in my case, and actually I probably shouldn't say as a man, because it's probably something to do with my childhood, right? But what it feels like I said, I go back to the Stoic man. I feel like, in a way, I have to be a rock. I need to be the framework of my kids' lives, that they gives them all this support and solidity or whatever. And as a result, admitting I'm wrong is a kind of, could undermine that frame a bit. And I'm happy to sort of like live with that, even though I know, oh shit, I'm wrong. Probably I could open up here and admit to the kids, you know what, I was wrong. But I feel like that possibly maintaining the frame is important at this point, and I'll live with the consequences, which are, I didn't open up, I was wrong, and I knew it, and blah 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 and blah blah blah. You know,
we are imperfect humans. We're imperfect parents, and nature gets nothing wrong. Nature made us to be imperfect parents. It's to show children that humans are imperfect. Everybody makes mistakes, but they're worthy of love anyway. Your parent is imperfect and you should love them because of that. Because that is basically the blueprint by which they will search for their mates later on, right? Your daughters are going to model their future partners on their father. And they don't need perfection. They need that loving, kind, safe space, especially as a woman. You know, you want that, what you do obviously amazingly, the provider figure, the person to give them safety. That's what we as women crave. But not perfection. It's not necessary. It's not important, and it's not realistic
unless your partner also has that glitch and they require perfection, which
but it's something, it takes a lot of energy, I think, to maintain that, and it takes a lot of your energy. I think letting your guard down, and nothing is feels better than if the other person is vulnerable with you and relatable, you know. Except
though, so what about this, because I agree with what you're saying, but when you look at the wife and husband dynamic, or the partner dynamic, sometimes I think it's important for you to work together, and if you have if your partner is particularly sort of like weak in one area of their parenting, I think it can be up to you to sort of fill that gap. Like, for example, in the case of, go back to the Stoicism thing, if you have an overly emotional, mollycoddling partner, who, from my perspective, woman, then as a guy, you probably, in order to add that balance so that the kids get a balanced view of the world, you might need to be little bit more stoic and more authoritarian.
You're overcorrecting.
It kind of overcorrecting, but I would say it's actually naturally correcting, because it's just finding a balance in your parenting. I mean, this is the reason why I think that, having, and hopefully you'll disagree with me here, because you parent in a very different way, but I think male and females in a co-parenting relationship are super important.
Oh yeah.
And the same ones, and this is why divorces screw kids up so much, because even amicable divorces screw kids up, because you end up in different houses, and you have the ex-husband's house and the ex-wife's house, and what worked when you were together was you're both parenting styles in the same house. But as soon as they go to these different places, it's like, oh, with mum we're allowed to smoke weed and, or whatever, and have boys in our bedrooms. And then at dad's, they're like, no. And who in their right mind is going to want to be at their dad's at that point?
Yeah.
Because they're trying to show them that, like, this is an important boundary. You know, there's a real world out there where smoking weed at 14 might not be a good idea. And those guys selling you that weed, they're probably not good guys at the moment. It's, you know, and this kind of thing, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, there's like other reasons why divorce screws kids up, because they're evolutionarily made to grow up with one mother and one father, right? That's the model, the family. And if that is split up, then it has all sorts of problems, even if the parenting styles were not different. But if they are, that's another level of complexity, of course, for the child to navigate. Instantly, I just had a friend separated from her husband, and they had a dog, and now the dog is half the time with her, half the time with him, and they said all of the dog's training has gone down the drain because we treat the dog differently. So the dog is confused as hell. You know, it's not healthy for him. He started biting. He started these like toxic behaviors because of the confusion of the approaches. So it wreaks havoc on the children. But I agree with you that a father and a mother have a different role in the family that goes with the traditional male and female role. I mean, the man is the provider. He's the rock of the family. And the mother provides like the nurturing, right? Kind of the softness. And then that's the roles that I found my family has also naturally settled into. And that's the roles that I feel in my heart are right. And the children thrive in that environment. I don't think that it's necessary, and maybe that's not what you were saying, but for the father to like overcorrect. You know, you are naturally, just by being a man that enjoys being a man, you will naturally project the type of energy to the children, the kind of like firm, protective provider role. And that includes showing vulnerability. That includes showing that you're not infallible. Because you're showing your real self. I think like showing up for kids in a way that's real, because I think that they know anyway who we are. I mean, they see us all the time. They see the truth. And I think that they know when we're kind of play acting and when there's a little bit of a facade, because they are evolutionally wired to be attuned to us. They know every single mood. Like I know that when I had a baby and I was like coming to them a little grumpy, they would pick up on it. They totally see us.
Right.
So you might as well show up the way you are and show them that's okay.
I'm talking to the manosphere here, but I think a lot of men will recognize this experience in this day and age, that men revealing their vulnerability to their wives can often result in their wives using that against them, using that vulnerability against them. That's a very common experience in the 21st century, I think. And I think that's why a lot of men either just forget their masculinity completely, which is a massive fuck up as far as I'm concerned. And that is so common. And it's so common in culture now. You know, male role models being really just nothing guys who are, you know, but it's, yeah, what do you think about that? Is that, do you know what I'm talking about? About me revealing myself to a woman and then them, what's the word? They use it against me. They take that and then, project it back on me because, you know, for whatever reason, something very personal, I'm sure.
I think it could be the dynamic in that relationship could be maybe balanced like a little more, because a man should be allowed to reveal his vulnerability to a woman. Given that he is like in his safe masculine, the role that I described, the safety, the provider, he can be permitted to have his humanity. I think if the woman is also like feels safe with that man, she will, you know, that is like how we pay men back. Like we create like the home for them, right? Where they can also be themselves and they're fighting their battles and they're hunting the mammoth outside. But when you come home, like you can also, because we all have both of the polarities in us. We have, you know, you have like some feminine, you have like mostly masculine, and I have both as well. And we can allow them to unfold, especially in our cave, in our house. I would question why the woman would use that against the man and to weaponize something like that.
That's the word I've written down, weaponize. But I've just thought what it is. I'll give you an example, right? So You're a family unit, say. You're a man, you're in your protective role of your family. And then there is a very real threat right there and then. And at that point, you reveal your insecurity to your wife, who then goes, well, fuck, I was hoping that you would kind of lead through this or something. There's a real threat there. There's a big guy. And now I'm really worried.
I got it.
Because before that, I wasn't worried. So, but it's like the best way to describe it is, weaponizing. You reveal yourself and then someone weaponizes it against you. Yeah.
I know what it is now. The response that should come from the feminine is, I know you're scared and I know that you got it because you're the man that I chose to protect our family, and I know that you will figure it out. I will stand by you no matter what, and I have 1,000% trust in you. I don't know how you'll do it. I don't know how you'll achieve it, because that's not my job. It's your job. And that's why I found you. In all this world, I chose you to take care of me and to provide for me, and I know that you will. So that is like the woman's like alchemy, where you can give the man the superpowers. You totally trust him with his guidance, and that also means, trusting him in everyday life a little more. And like you said, sometimes maybe even the parenting approaches clash. I try to always like support my husband, even if I don't always 100% agree with him. I agree maybe 90% of the time. But even if it's a 10%, I would always prioritize like our relationship over the kids, because that gives the kids the sense of safety. They see like, hey, mom is trusting dad to lead. So I trust him, they're a unit, everything's going to be okay. So if the man falters in his faith, the woman should reaffirm his strength.
I mean, that's an amazing response. I think that's an uncommon response in this day and age. And the way you described it, even, you were hitting all the talking points of sort of like modern day extreme feminism. It's like, no, I don't need to do that. I don't need to do that. I don't need to do that. Because it's, at the end of the day, what you're describing is your own strength. So a man reveals a weakness and you're expected to come back with a reaffirmation of strength. That's a really uncommon experience.
It's taken me some time like to get to this point also, because neoliberal feminism has taken us to a place where women are conditioned to fight men, right? They're enemies, and
or not necessary, like they're
or
different.
Not necessary. And the ironic thing is that neoliberal feminism has basically adopted like all the features of like men. Like if we become just like men, if we take over forward like the girl boss and all that, then we'll be happy. If we replicate what men are, we'll be happy. But what this resulted in is that women, are basically equal earners, right? There is like a lot of studies that show that 45% of women earn as much as a man in a household. But they still do all the silent labor, predominantly in the house, and they end up feeling like exhausted and just divorced from themselves. And while the men have like more leisure time, so it's not a good bargain. It's not a good bargain. I think what the feminine truly needs is like, yes, it has been harmed by men, but men have been harmed by men. For the largest part of human history, men have led horrible lives, extremely difficult, man-on-man violence. All the wars have been like men dying. So maybe there is that 1% of the population, which is the men that control everything and that are inflicting horrible wounds on the rest of us. But men are just as much victims of that as women. And we have basically thrown the baby out with the bathwater, right? Saying like all men are the enemy, not this maybe like bad system that we're in. I think that what the feminine ultimately needs is the feeling of safety. And giving that to yourself by being the girl boss, it doesn't really scratch the itch, because I want to be held, I want to be protected, I want to be like worshipped by the man, I want to be taken care of. And then I can nurture my own creativity and, also making my own money, but not from the place of need, because the man has taken care of that. And I will tell you, it feels so good to relinquish some of that control. Also, what comes very difficult to me personally, the need to be right always.
What difficulty in
to the right,
having to be right,
wanting to be right, having to be, and sometimes just saying like, what, like, you're my husband, you're the head of this family, like, we'll do it your way. And I thought it would feel horrific. And for years I fought against that. But that is like one of the best feelings, because I feel like that's what we're wired to do. And now, granted, it has to be a high value man, right? Well, that's why you spend a long time choosing that man. But when you find a man like that who is safe in that provider role and puts you above all else, does it all for you, right? Goes out and fights all those battles for you. And a man will do that gladly. Like, that's all they want to do, to take care of the family and like to take care of the wife so they have a beautiful life. And from a place like that, I can also work if I want to. I don't have that need, the visceral need to like support like the bottom of Maslow's pyramid, right? I'm like taking care of the family. Like, no, that's not my role. My husband will do it and he'll figure it out.
So why did you think that to begin with then? That you had to do all that stuff? Is that feminism that's done that? Or?
Yeah, probably. And like models in my family where, you know, the women were very strong. I mean, they kind of had to be. You know, when you think about it, in the previous regime, there was exactly this, like what I described, this like flipping over the male and female role, where the woman also worked like an 8-hour difficult job and then came home and took care of the family, and the husband worked an 8-hour job but then went to the pub or played football. But so the women were very,
let me just butt in a second. Why was that? Was that because communism made everyone go to work?
Yeah.
Pretty much. Was it?
Yeah.
Was that the system? Men and women had to go to work.
Yes.
And because the roles were like in the old days, man would work, therefore it was tough, and coming home he might have felt the need to go to the pub, let's say,
right, or just relax, like,
right. The role at home was a bit more chilled. I'm not saying it's harder or easier or whatever, but less emotional turmoil, less serious shit you got to deal with. Okay, but then communism said, right, everyone's got to go to work, and they kept the old parts and the new parts together, and it didn't work, which is kind of what's happening everywhere else as well, isn't it? It's like,
right. Well, if you know, feminism, they had a huge like female liberation movement also, and like women are just as equal because they needed them. They needed like the workers, right, to build a socialist dream. So everybody had to work, and you know, I think that like the feminism in the Western world, it was. It sounded great because everybody wants equal opportunity. You know, we want same opportunities as men, and like, okay, now we got them. Yeah. So I don't think that there's any more really to fight for in that front. Everybody has equal opportunities. But what feminism has really done in the West, it's, you know, first, like women can be taxed now. So we tax the full population. Great. And it's broken up the family where the woman can stay home, take care of the kids. So you outsource that to the system, right? Maybe to a nanny, but most likely to a kindergarten, which is a very unnatural environment for children to be with a huge group of their peers, and then 2 overworked ladies, ideally, you know, that are taking care of them. And the parent is a footnote, basically, seen at the start of the day, at the end of the day. That's how it was here, for sure, like in the previous regime, communism, but it continues.
So a large state kind of requires that, doesn't it? It requires it requires the finances of 100% of the population working, and it also requires then that it's self-replicating, which means the children go to get looked after by the state, and as a result,
yeah, and of course that's how we can you know, indoctrinate them. The sooner the better, to be obedient. So there is like freedom is taken out of the equation, what the child wants, what the child is feeling, because in every system, every totalitarian system or whatever we have now, obedience is prized above all. And critical thinking, independent thinking is very dangerous, has to be weeded out by being isolated, being ideally shamed, because shamed is a very powerful tool of control, possibly the most powerful that we have. And we use that also on a daily basis with kids. I do too. And I'm trying to catch myself not to do that. But, you know, one of my favorite things that I like catch myself saying, what are you doing? All right. Which is such a disingenuous question when I see what the kid is doing. And I feel like they're spilling something. It's like, what are you doing? Like, I'm shaming the kid because I see what they're doing. I don't need their explanation. But it implies like what you're doing is so stupid and demented that I need you to explain yourself to me for what you're doing. So, yeah, shame.
I think shame works a lot better on women than men, though. I think men tend to be a lot less prone to shaming. I think it depends. I think you can be hoodwinked into. I know a few men who got into a relationship with a woman that loved shaming them, and it got them, and they ended up falling for it. But on the whole, men don't shame each other. Like I couldn't shame my friends. They'd be like, well, what are you talking about? I don't give a shit whether you think what I'm doing is wrong. I'm doing this thing, like whatever, But
yeah, maybe you can't with your friends, and that's a testament to like your friendship. That's really great. I think shame can work though on like the macro level in society. Like people were literally shamed for like, not masking. Like you're irresponsible, you're endangering everybody else, like you're anti-science. Those are all instruments of shame. It works very strongly because, of course, shame implies you're going to be excommunicated, right? You're going to be ostracized, and that evolutionarily meant death. The tribe is going to reject you. That's what shame is saying to you. That's what we coil away from being embarrassed or shamed, because we'll die in the wilderness
that's
alone.
Why. I mean, I was that guy during the pandemic who deliberately didn't wear a mask.
Yeah, I'm same. Totally. High five.
It was hard though, going into a supermarket and basically everyone looking at you. But that made me want to do it more, because I thought, right, here's a good challenge, because I'm really feeling this now. This is like everyone here. I mean, I've looked in the science. I've looked at whether or not this is important on so many levels, and I'm deciding no.
Yeah, same.
And I'm also deciding it because the people telling me to do it, I don't respect or trust in the slightest, right? So this is a good reason. And even with all that, it was still hard.
Yeah.
It was still hard. It's almost like the people that did it best were the absolute sociopaths who don't care what other people think. I do care what other people think, and I could feel it. And for me, it was more like, do I really want the hassle of having to explain to someone or to wear a thing that says I don't need a mask, which I didn't.
Right.
Okay. I mean, in England, a lot of people just didn't have the balls to come up to you and talk and say, put your mask on. I mean, I never got told to put a mask on.
Yeah, I got told.
But I mean, someone else who that I won't say who it is, even on planes, they used to do it.
Cool.
But that takes a lot of, and bullshit. Like literally sitting there saying, I don't need to wear a mask. Yes, you do, sir, madam, whatever, I never took it that far. On the planes, I just did, but it would always slip off or whatever. But
right. As a charade. Yeah, but I mean, it's a very like powerful moment also to be in, to stand your ground and to know that you're right and everybody else can F off. And I think that's really like good to also like empower our kids to do that. That's why, bring back to the children all the time, because it's so important to me that they can say no even to the highest authority. And that's me as a parent. Like you can question every single rule that's out there. Even if the TV is telling you 24/7, this is the one thing you have to do. Posters are telling you there is penalties for it, right? And yet you feel in your gut what is right. Because ultimately it comes down to intuition. I mean, you can read a million studies that say yes, a million studies that say no. But I just knew that it didn't make sense and that I didn't want to do it. And so I didn't do it. And I want my kids to be able to make the decision for themselves also in 10 years' time, in 50 years' time, like today. If I tell them something and they just disagree, I actually enjoy when they like talk back to me and when they defy me. And that's not an act. I feel it like selfishly, I feel it like it's a testament to my parenting because they feel safe enough to defy me, Fair
enough. I mean, going back to the masks again, because part of the reason as well, I mean, I did have to justify it myself. I did have to think, okay, what does that person think about me? Is there some truth in it? Is there this, that, and the other? And blah, blah. They've got every right to sort of like be pissed off that I'm not following the rules or whatever. But really, with masks, like wearing a mask was about protecting yourself. This was the crazy thing. And it was almost like, you're basically, if you want to protect yourself, go ahead. It was like the lockdowns. It was like, if you want to lock yourself in your house, be my guest, because that's a good strategy. Like if you're that person that you think COVID's going to get you, you looked at all the science and you still decided that as a 30-year-old person, you could die from COVID, say. Cool, you can go and stay inside then. And the same with masks. It's like, it seems to be a pretty good way to stop to put a mask in front of you stops things. I mean, it turned out it didn't really stop all things, which is what people thought, but it does stop some things, you know, dust and stuff maybe. So if you think that's going to work, then that's a great decision for you. You put it over your face and it's doing its job. Like, what was the weird thing about it? And it was nothing to do with the science and everything to do with obedience.
Absolutely.
Again,
compliance.
was like, no, you need to do it. And even on the lockdowns, I think the general sense of the lockdowns was, well, look, you need to do it so that I can then, like, I want to be able to go out to restaurants and I want to be able to do this thing. So you need to do that with masks as well. And that's where the whole thing is screwed up, because if you take responsibility for yourself, it works the other way. It's like, if you're scared of this virus, go and stay inside. You can use Tesco Direct. You can get everything delivered to your door. You can be really just fine, you know. But it was the other thing. It was like, no, you need to validate my experience rather than I'm just going to do what I need from me and my family or my friends, whatever. And that was where that was the really disappointing thing about that whole experience, was seeing that people defaulted to that en masse. You know,
they did. And looking back, you know, I used to really feel angry about it, how many people just complied blindly. I understand it from the place of, I'm trying to a little more empathy right now, because again, the world that I look at, I can't help going back to childhood. If you are raised obeying an authority, your parents that you cannot question, even the decisions about your bodily autonomy, like what you wear, what you eat, when you eliminate, you know, are outsourced to that authority that you cannot question. Then you go to school where you're told when to sit down, what to learn, what to think, and being too different means you're a troublemaker, you know? And then, of course, you take a job and you listen to your boss. Your whole life, you have outsourced those decisions to somebody else. Well, so now it's always like the big daddy, you know, comes and tells you got a mask, otherwise you're a bad boy. And if you mask, you get a gold star. It is the same mechanism. And if you're never taught otherwise, if you've never tasted otherwise, of course you will default to that, because that's where you're safe. That's where you're not excommunicated. That's where the tribe accepts you. So it is very difficult to live a life like that and then suddenly question the authority.
That's what happened to me, though. So there is hope.
We're very, very few. Very few. But I think it was also a great catalyst. That is the amazing thing about COVID, because it opened so many people's eyes, right? It was our dark night of the soul, but ultimately, we realized what kind of a sham it all was. I mean, that's how I see it. It was just a sham. But you also see how malleable people are and how easy in a way it is to control them, right? Just through fear. It was always the same playbook. You just make them really scared of the one enemy. And I had some friends in Germany, and they said, you know, we learned about National Socialism our whole lives at school, but we never understood it. Well, now we had COVID, now we understand it. Now we know how it all happened.
I want to go back to men and women. Sorry. I had a question. I'd written down this thing that I wanted to go into because it's something I started thinking about recently. And I think this is going to be a big problem in the future. If you follow the what's currently happening between men and women, and you know the way you described the relationship between men and women it sounds amazing, but it's not a common experience
yet.
Right? Okay, yet. But here's something I was thinking about the other day. If you look at the male side and the female side, the worst aspect of the kind of modern feminist movement is I don't need a man, right? And we all know in reality is not true. That's not true. And even on a physical level, you know, look around you, everything you see is built and maintained by men. So directly, you might not need a man to walk down the stairs and get a taxi, but actually he's probably driving the taxi. He built the taxi. he, you know, okay. I'm not talking about that, but what might happen and is going to happen is technology is making men redundant in many ways, right? And the other aspect of I don't need a man is, you know, to protect me. And once again, at the moment, society's kind of protecting women, but really guns, for example, have made that a reality for women. You know, it's that in the past, you needed a man to protect you from other men because men are stronger than women. You know, we know that. But technology is changing that as well. And now you imagine, right? We go into a point 50 years in the future where personal assistant robots are like the same price as a mobile phone or something. You won't need a man for many of the things that you talk about. Everything will be being built by robots. Protection. You'll have this thing that's stronger than all men, probably, that could protect you if you wanted, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's that side. Now on the men's side, what are the aspects of men that we need women, and we do, and one of the main ones, sex, right? I mean, what's the first application of bloody robots going to be? It's going to be sex, isn't it? Like, when a man has the choice between this incredible, the most beautiful woman he's ever seen, who loves him, who says he's the best guy ever, and who never gets bored of sex, or the complicated woman who he's going to choose that at least once or twice, and before you know it, so I'm thinking, let's go deep into the future. It all comes true, and men don't need women, and women don't need men, and the whole thing falls apart. What do you think about that?
I'm forever an optimist, and I think human nature cannot be overwritten. At least thousands of years of evolution you cannot override with 50 years of technological jump. Underneath, we're all still like slightly better version of monkeys, and we have these deep, deep needs for the polarity of male and female. We need the other to complement us. That's what we all want, and a robot will never replace that, because sex is a part of it, but it's far and wide not the whole picture of what a man gets from a woman. He gets her spirituality, he gets her intuition, he gets her presence, the warm, the energy of a woman. No robot could ever replicate.
What about, though, sorry to butt in, maybe don't think of it as a robot, maybe think of it as a digital realm, which is indistinguishable from this, which is definitely coming, and it's like, I don't know, plug in the wires to the back of your head, a la Matrix, the film.
Yeah, I mean,
and you can experience whatever you want. Right. In fact, it's more likely to be that.
Yeah.
It's more likely to be, and the feelings, the experience, it's not going to be distinguishable from you and I talking at this table right now. I think, anyway. You may not believe that, but
I mean, in a way, we already have a simple version of that. We already have, right? It's not as advanced as what you described with robots or a plug-in, but whatever. But there is, we talked about sex, so there's pornography that is available for free 24/7. You have apps to cater to your every need. And yet humans seek human connection. It could already have been severed now.
Well,
right?
Isn't it? A lot of men I don't know about the dating scene because I've not been in it for years, but I'm hearing that they're, bailing out, and a lot of guys.
And in a way, I don't blame them, because to an extent, the mainstream culture says that men are bad, and that being a man it's a crime almost, to an extent. Being too manly is undesirable. So you have to diminish yourself, right? You have to be seen as non-threatening. But non-threatening man is no longer a man. A man is a force to be reckoned with, And I love being in the presence of men. It's also because I had the big luck, privilege. I had an amazing father who was a present father. So I was not harmed by men in my life. But I know that a lot of women truly were. So their kind of hatred of men is justified to a certain extent by very, very suboptimal fathers. And hating the man, it always comes to the bad daddy, to me. If a woman is the neoliberal type of feminist, usually it was not a good relationship with her father, right? That's the truth that I really believe in.
They call it daddy issues, don't they?
Daddy issues, yeah. Which has also been sexualized in a weird way. I think it's just a father wound, basically, we would say.
Does that include fathers leaving daughters?
Sure, or just not feeling safe. Not feeling safe with the father, that he's not there in that role that we discussed as that guardian. It's the safe haven, which also means the boundaries, lovingly applied boundaries. If those are not there for the daughter, she will not fundamentally feel safe. And that is the father wound. And that's why, projecting that is hating all men. But, in that is deep victim mentality also. I think if women work maybe on that, healing themselves, they would not be projecting.
How do they work on that then?
Oh my goodness, like the work of your soul and of your deep traumas, that is.
Yeah, how do you do that? Like you hear that, trauma is like a real buzzword at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah,
we've all got it.
Yeah.
How do
100%.
you deal with a trauma? Say you're acting in a way that someone's hopefully, because I think most people don't recognize their own traumas, do they? It gets called out somehow. Mm-hmm. How do you deal? Say you have a part of your personality is exhibiting this prior trauma. How does it get dealt with?
Well, step one is what you already addressed. It's awareness. Like if you don't know something's there, then you can't heal it. It's like with alcoholism, right? If you don't admit you have a problem, then don't even bother doing anything about it. If you think you're fine, and a lot of people will tell you like, yeah, my dad left me and my mom drank, but I'm fine. Look how I turned out fine. And I'm not one to question that, but I know that I've addressed, or I'm continuously working, and I think I will forever be working on on the shadow, right? The subconscious mind that is formed by the age of 7 or so, and that really informs how we live our lives. And the work of your life is to look into that shadow and to bring it into the light. The things that you subconsciously do, the autopilot that controls you, that's usually where the trauma lives and thrives. And the more awareness you bring to it, and the more you sit with really uncomfortable emotions that you have tried to cover up, maybe with anger or blaming others or shaming others, that's where the juice is. And that's where I think kids are invaluable, because they bring it out in all of us. Where my kids trigger me, that's usually where my traumas are. So I can tell you.
Give us an example.
I'll tell you where my kids trigger me. Food. I like to live healthy. I was telling you about microplastics when I got here. Yeah. It's a big topic. So a couple years ago, I fancied myself I know everything about what healthy nutrition is, right? I've gone through the paleo and keto and low carb to now, carnivore is where it's at.
Are you carnivore now?
I'm not. No, I'm not.
Okay,
I'm not.
right.
Because I'm coming kind of out of those things. But whatever, I fancied myself, I know what the right diet is for a young person. And it's so important, because otherwise you're going to be not developing to your full potential, right? So I would control what they eat. And if my kids were not eating probably what I wanted, it really triggered me. It made me angry. And I realized I have not a good relationship with food, where I try to be over controlling with myself. And then when I see them eating freely, whatever the hell they want, there's almost a resentment. My kids get to eat what they want, but I don't. That's not fair.
They could be eating crap though. I mean, they could be eating sweets all day. Does it?
But that's the thing. That's what parents always say. They're going to be eating sweets all day. Well, so first of all, if in your house, you don't have bags and bags of sweets that they could be eating all day, right? We can provide healthy food.
There's a big pile of sweets by this table.
There's a giant bowl of the worst kind.
That's me being a host,
syrup.
A good host, though. But no, we don't have. I will take all those home, though. I do they all get shared out amongst my children when I get back. But.
And, I think now the right way to eat is be in tune with your body and do what your body tells you. Important, not what your mind tells you. Because I think our mind tricks us a lot into hey, I sit in front of the TV, I always get popcorn, so let me make a bowl of popcorn. But it's really the mind wanting it. Because if you focus, does my stomach really want popcorn in it right now? A lot of the times the answer would be no. But it's my habit. I like that it's crunchy. I like the activity of it. So you're not really being intuitive, right? But if you don't let your kids experiment with food and occasionally make a horrible mistake, I've had my kids eat so much chocolate that their stomach hurt. It's happened.
Yes.
But then they've never done it again.
Yeah.
The lived experience, again, above all else. And it means, relinquishing control a little bit. Because when it comes to relationship, whether it's male, female, or parent-child, we can always choose control or we can choose connection. And I realize if I'm controlling my kids and what they eat, I'm not connecting with them. And it's harming their relationship with food. So now we have some candy in our house, and my daughter brings it from school. And she used to hide it from me. And I'm ashamed now to say that. And now occasionally I'm hey, what'd you get? You get those sour snakes? She's yeah, they're awesome. Yeah. I used to love sour snakes as a kid. And it's it's childhood. Go nuts. And when she has a sleepover with her friend, they go and they just buy a bag of sweets. And I'm okay with that now. But that being said, for dinner, we have food that I cook. We cook together. So I bring to the forefront, give them the healthy options. And every now and then to transgress, even transgressing against certain boundaries, ironically, like strengthens them, because you understand, it was like in the medieval times, they had that like day of the king where like one peasant or like the village idiot got to be king, and then they would like obey what he said for a day. It's the subversion of the rules where it gives you like the one day of transgression and excess, and then we go back to normal, right? It's better than having 365 days of those stringent rules, because you know that on the one day you get to rage.
We do that on birthdays, actually. I didn't know that was a thing, the way you described it, but we must have just come to that conclusion ourselves. But because I am, certainly from my side, I am quite controlling of all kinds of things, especially technology and what they can.
That's a big one.
Do.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Here's my next question then. How do you personally deal with your kids mixing with other kids whose mums and dads have completely different parenting skills? Or maybe all the kids that go to your kids' school are pretty cool, but
they're very cool.
Oh, right. Okay. Is that how you deal with it?
Like, can you give me an example? Like, what would?
Well, no. Like, a dramatic example would be you expect your kids to respect you.
Yeah.
As a parent, and a kid comes round who's has been taught to disrespect their dad.
Yeah.
And then you have to give harsh words as a father, as you would to your daughter or your son if they disrespected you, said something rude or out of place.
Right.
But you would have a different attitude to that probably, because you would be more allowing, I would imagine.
I think so. I don't know that I expect my kids to respect me. I kind of, not to negate everything, but I respect them. And I think if you give respect, you will be given respect. I expect to something to be earned, because if I just walk in a room and expect people to respect you, right?
Well, I'm basing it on the fact that I've earned it then.
Yeah,
that's,
all right.
That's how I expect them to.
All right, so then it's a household based on respect of like mutual respect. And I think if a child goes into that, as a guest, I've never had a problem, because usually children would respect the rules of the house. I mean, no kid has ever transgressed against anything, but again, we don't have a lot of rules. I'll give you an example now. My daughter's friend came over and they're doing a sleepover, and when there's a sleepover, really I back off and I let them do whatever they want, and they stayed up until 3:30 in the morning.
Whoa.
Brutal.
Wow.
Brutal. They were wrecked the next day, and then the next day they did until midnight or so. But I let them do it, because I know that on a normal weekday when there's no sleepover, and I say to my kid, look, you had your fun this weekend, but let's wrap it up by 9:30. And then she will, because she also knows that on other days, I'm chill. So I think the less rules you have than the ones you do have, or I kind of almost make a request, hey, can we make it an early night? I'm super tired. Let's wrap it up. Then they honor it, because you also honor them on those other days.
Yeah, I think we have a similar policy.
Oh, there you go.
I had my 11-year-old had a party. It was a sleepover of 8 girls, and they had no limit. They put a tent up in one of the fields in the garden, and I don't know. We just went to bed. However, they were running around at 12:30 playing hide and seek in the dark, and I could hear them. And we have. Where we live, the sound travels miles,
Wow.
So I did say, look, knock it on the head. You can stay up as late as you want, but just sit in the tent.
Yeah, fair enough.
In the big tent, but yeah, I agree. And yeah, you're right. They do. I mean, they do what they're told when it comes to it. It's almost but I'm conscious that I'm having to let things happen. My instinct is very much to curb certain things. Yeah. And I consciously go, okay, I'm going to let this happen because it's not really that bad.
Yeah. Choose your battles, kind of.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it has to do with trust, and having trust in your children, and also having trust in humanity. I mean, we're voluntarists, both of us. So I think inherently we feel like people are good and people will do good. And I think children given autonomy will do good. I have that faith. Yeah, they don't have the experience that we've had. They don't have the knowledge, but they want to do well. I think where that trust is, if we were not given trust as children, then we feel it's not safe to give children that trust. But it is. children they're also pack animals, and we both just recently got a dog. You know, a dog wants to fit in with a tribe. So do the kids. Like, all mammals want to fit in and they want to avoid conflict. So short-term conflict can be very helpful, clear the air, kind of like rearrange the hierarchy of the tribe, of the pack. But long-term conflict is every mammal wants to avoid long-term conflict. So they actually are, humans, dogs, whales are collaborative by nature. So we just have to foster that environment where collaboration, debate, sure, maybe short-term conflict, that's all welcome. And we know in the end, we'll all find a solution together. So I think like authoritarian, which is different from authoritative, right? Authoritative parenting means that, yes, you're the authority, but the like loving, gentle, guiding, coaching authority. Whereas authoritative, it means like punitive, there's punishment. The authoritative actually like stifles that environment.
What do you do then if your kids have got a friend that's like likes the drama, you know, like a friend who is, for whatever reason, enjoys long-term conflict, which is kind of what you're describing of there are some people that just, you know, the way I think I often look at kids as everyone's got a strategy to get attention, which is kind of what they do. Like, it's kind of what we all do, I suppose, even in later life. True. But it's much more obvious in kids, and they often don't care what the attention is. Even if you're shouting them, it's still attention. They want really, you know, and then kids get used to the shouting at them as being the way to get attention. Yes. And in the end, like one of my kids, I won't, in case she's listening to this, she won't, but she might when she's older. She'll be like, Dad, I didn't, you know. One of them has learnt that one of the ways to get attention is to talk about a potential illness, for example. You know what I mean? Like, this really hurts, or I ache here, or I woke up and I had this thing in my eye or something. And like, I've noticed it for a long time, and it's like, I know what that is. Yeah. I don't know whether it's necessary to sort of call it out or whatever, because it's just...
I wouldn't call it out, but I think you touched on a very important point, that every behavior is communication in essence, right? And psychology has been dominated by behavioral psychology, which only looks at the behaviors. And from that comes like the punishment of like systems and rewards, and doing like gold star charts for kids if they behave, where the behavior is the end all. That's the only thing that's interesting. In reality, behavior is used to communicate something, and you very wisely identified as a father that this child is seeking attention, right? So that behavior, it's not about the eye rash or whatever. It's about, I want your attention. I want your undivided, because you have 3 kids. So your attention is pulled to like a million different directions. And the kids, they're selfish, as are we all, of course. You want the dad all to herself. So the fact that you realize that is amazing, because a lot of parents wouldn't. And I would just say, do whatever you can to give her that like one-on-one time. I feel like that works really wonders for my kids if I spend 10 minutes every day just with one of them. And for my 4-year-old right now, that's like playing Barbies, focused, no phone, which is hardcore do Barbies. And with my other kid, you know, she might be playing Roblox on her iPad, and she just wants to show me. So we just look at freaking Roblox, which I hate, for 10 minutes straight, and that's the attention, and they like soak it up as a sponge. And then there's like less conflict when they do that, less neediness, less kind of nagging. Then you're like filling their cup with what they need.
I think my strategy normally is to ignore it. So if I think I've noticed a play to get my attention, when it happens, I ignore. I go out of my way to not respond to it. Is that a bad strategy?
Well, what do you think would happen if you responded to it?
It reinforces it. Yeah. So, I mean...
but the need is there. It's
sure, yeah.
Right?
I mean, I get it, but I don't think that I think kids just want... They'll want 120% attention if they could. Yeah. So me giving her attention in another time of her life isn't necessarily going to fix it. It's just it's a habit.
I would try. So you don't want to reinforce like the kind of hypochondriac, whatever.
It's not that bad, but yeah.
But I would like do my best to maybe take like 15 minutes, like at the end of the day or somewhere, like, hey, can I come to bed with you? And like, let's read, and not give the attention like maybe immediately, like check the eye. Cool. Like I'm doing my duty as a dad. Looks good. Let's hang out later. And like, let's go for a walk.
I think
later.
In my case, she's shifted her attention to her mum at that time.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because Liz will always respond well to that. She's hardwired to respond to the needs of her children, obviously.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't really work in this case because...
But at the same time, like, look, for a girl, like the relationship with the dad, oh my God. I know as a little girl, like my dad was a god for me. And to a certain extent, like nothing will replace that in a way. I still like really like look up to my dad. I still even now want his attention when something goes well in my life. Like I want him to say to me like, wow, like you really nailed it or something like that. It means so much to me, even more maybe than my mom, because it's like the primeval like connection. I think the girls need the dad so bad. I see that in my girls that I can like do whatever I want with them. Like we spend a lot of time, but like the dad, my God.
Yeah, but interestingly, now, because I have one daughter that's just entered puberty, I'm noticing that it's all changing, and actually I'm still like, she shuts the door, for example, to her bedroom, first time ever, and I'm
like locks?
No,
or shuts.
No, shuts it.
Closes. Okay,
We've lived in a house where we're a very close family unit, and obviously I'm going to leave that door shut. I have to.
Of course.
But I don't want to. I want to knock on. Just I saw this crazy meme on the internet the other day, which is so true because I do it myself, and it was something like, "What dads do in your bedroom." It's basically they walk in. Just around. Stand there and look around. Yeah, I do that. What's that all about? I'm looking. It's like I'm looking at all the stuff she's done in her room. I'm really not in a weird way, just like in a this is who you are kind of way. And but I do that. I stand there. But
it's great. But I mean, of course, like the fact that she started shutting her door, I think that's like signifies such an important symbol, like the shut door, where she is like growing, like becoming, a young woman. A lot of indigenous cultures, they have the ritual where like something is done like to the boy and the girl, like that you're now ending childhood and you're entering adulthood, right? And we don't do those rituals anymore. But I think that's maybe like a bit of a loss, because like to celebrate that transformation, it really is like a transformation from that cocoon to a butterfly. And I know a family that does those rituals. They have like 5 kids, and they said after that ritual is done, the kids get to like close their door and we cannot enter without knocking. That's like also the symbolic thing. Like you have your own space. Like this is your privacy. You're becoming your own person. And it's so cool that she's like seeking it herself. I would really honor that, because like also you trust your child, she's not like smoking crack in there or something, hopefully. So, no, but I get it, and it's very like metaphorical, because you're seeking that like insight still into her world, but she's leaving that childhood. You're going to be let in like less and less, unless that connection is actively like fostered. And I think a lot of parents are at a loss with teenage kids. Like, how do you maintain that connection?
Well, especially the one you described, which was the father-daughter relationship, because what I've noticed is now that she's entering a world where I don't have any domain, periods, boobs growing, all that kind of stuff. It's like, what am I going to say? Oh yeah, here's some advice. I can say, I can definitely bring the male perspective in, because basically, that is changing. That's going to change, and they already are. And I'm desperate I want to be able to help her navigate through. Because what I don't want to happen is for her. She's in particular, she's a really nice girl, and she's really she looks after people. And in my experience, the first idiotic guy that shows her attention when she's older, that comes through, she's going to fall in love with, and she's probably going to get burned the first time. And I don't want that to happen, because I've seen it. She's starting to realize that she commands this kind of superpower over guys, which all girls do in a way, but she's also going to be very attractive. You can see it when she's older, but she has that kind of innocence, which is, like, just getting attention is going to be a big deal for her. And I think that kind of happened to me. I think my first girlfriend, everyone's probably first relationship. How often are they a healthy one, when you think back?
Mine was all right.
Was it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Mine wasn't. It was like, because no one showed me, or no one taught me to be conscious about it. Do you know what I mean? Like we don't do that much. Same with like choosing your life partner. Most people just think they're going to fall in love with someone, when the truth is you could make it work with probably a 75% of the population if you really wanted to. And actually a better thing would be to go out with a very specific plan of the kind of person you're looking for. And I can see you're disagreeing with me there, but like, or like this, right? This is because I've had to think about what advice am I going to give my kids, you know, when it comes to that time. They bring someone home for the first time. I thought it's going to be horrendous.
Yeah. He's going to have piercings. You're going to hate it.
Oh, yeah. But no, if he's a douchebag, it's going to be really piss me off. Of course it is.
But you won't say anything. You can't say anything.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think one of the things is like unsolicited opinion. Yeah, for parents. Like the less parents say, almost, the better, because you want the kid to come to you.
She won't be able to. She'll know if I'm sat there going, "Who the hell is this douchebag?"
Right. You know, I'm learning the power of like kind of withholding my opinion on a lot of things. So my 4-year-old now is super into makeup, and some of the looks are questionable.
Yeah,
all right?
Of course. Yeah.
There is like glitter, like pink glitter under the eyes, eyeliner, which I can't even draw. Like she attempts, so it's like Ziggy started us like on acid or something, and I just learned like not to say anything. Like, all right, I don't even say this is what you're wearing. Like, no, just shut up. Like, we'll just go outside. Like, are you ready to go? Let's go.
Yeah.
This is your look.
But that's good, because that comes back to shame again.
Yes.
And the worst thing, I agree, we never did that with our kids, and it was more fashion than anything else. They dressed themselves, and I would always be like, we're just going out. I don't care what you're wearing.
Yeah,
I think
great.
If you really want to wear that, then that's cool. I think it could be a problem when other people start judging them. But anyway.
But that is then the feedback that they get, and then they decide for themselves. But I think that if they're like used to kind of like standing their ground, having their opinions, you know, they're more likely to withstand even like other people's judgment, because people are going to judge you no matter what. If you don't wear makeup as a girl, they're going to judge you. If you wear makeup, they will. Guys have their own things. That's okay. And they might decide, okay, I'm being too judged, like I'm ashamed now, so I'm going to change it. Then you as parents just like support it, like, okay. And I would usually just say like, you know what to do best. Like, I know you'll figure it out. I don't even like offer solutions unless they like literally ask, Mom, what should I do? And I would still say like, honey, I know you'll figure it out.
Going back to advising kids when they're on partnerships, this is my strategy going forward. And I can't remember where I heard this, or whether I even thought it up myself. I can't remember, but I still, it's been a few years now, and I still think this is the best strategy. Tell me what you think. So, and I know, actually, when you fall in love with someone, sometimes you have no choice. But what I will say is, my son, for example, if my son meets a woman and he's wondering whether she's a good long-term prospect, I would say two things. Number one is go and visit her house. Who's her mother? Who is she? Do you like her? Is she warm? Does she make you feel comfortable? Does she move, you know? Because basically, she's the girl is going to turn out something similar. And secondly, is they spend a weekend at home with their family on a day trip or on a whatever. Is it functional? Is everyone getting on? Was there a lot of love there? Blah, blah, blah. Because between those two things, that's basically what's going to happen in your life. You're going to end up in that same situation for all the reasons we spoke about earlier, that what she finds normal in the case of a woman is going to be what was normal when she was a kid. And if it was dysfunction, she's going to look for that with you. And if you're not a dysfunctional person, you come from a family of really supportive, loving people, it's going to be a ball ache for you your whole life. And you're basically choosing someone for the next 50 years, which is something that a lot of people I didn't think about it. Like, no one told me. My dad didn't sit me down one day and go, look, choose right, you know, and check this thing out and check this thing out and try and be stoic about it, because you'll be attracted to hundreds of women for many different reasons. But what you have to think is, this is a decision you're making, hopefully, for the next 50 years or whatever. So don't just go for the girl with big tits or whatever, or, you know, like, or the first girl that gives you attention, or the dramatic one, or or whatever it is that most people, like I say, I think the majority of people just think they're going to fall in love with someone naturally, and that's going to be the one. But in my experience, you can fall in love with lots of different people if you really want to.
Yeah,
it's about an intention. It's like, is my intention to stay with this person and build a life with them for the next 50 years? And if both people think that, then that's what's going to happen. You know, and that can, I think that's why some people like, well, arranged marriages. You know, I think, I don't know whether this is true, but I think the data on arranged marriages is actually quite good. They do last a long time.
Well, they don't divorce, but it's also like, because in a lot of those cultures, like divorce is not an option. So I don't know to what extent they're distorted. I do know like that because I lived in Asia for some time. So I had friends who had parents in arranged marriages, and they were very loving marriages. So also the parents do a pre-selection, right? Hopefully that's like an arranged marriage, not just like who's the richest guy, but also they usually would take into account like temperaments and stuff. So it's not totally a blind choice.
But saying that, and I've got to be careful that I don't give away who this is, but I know someone who comes from a foreign country a long way away who has an arranged marriage but also had a love interest who was courting her, and she went for the one she was supposed. She didn't go for the love interest in the end. Right. She went for the arranged marriage. And because we're very good friends, and I've been watching this with real interest. She went for that guy because it's what her mother and father want, and it's for what society wanted for her. Yeah. And it'll be fine. It'll be absolutely fine. But there was a love interest. Nothing had happened between them, because stuff like that doesn't happen in that community. However, there was a love interest. She felt it. You know, I've seen them together, and it was proper, like, you know, but she chose the one that'd been betrothed to her since childhood. And now she's got 2 kids with him, and now everything's fine. Yeah. But in that culture especially, the power of the community is much stronger. Like, we're all individualists over here, aren't we? We're like, what's best for me kind of thing. And but in a lot of other cultures, it's like, what's best for the community.
And especially your debt to your parents, you have to honor them, and you have to do, they know best for you. So you really like give up kind of like your autonomy. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. It's just, I mean, it's different.
Well, I reckon I could pick a good husband for my daughters and my son. Possibly. I could pick it. I think there's a lot in that.
I think what you said is, you made an excellent point with looking to the family patterns in your future, like in your potential partner. Because it goes back to what, we've been saying the whole time, that like childhood informs who you're going to become as a person. And we imprint in our children the patterns, how they relate to other people. So especially seeing the interplay between the father and mother of like your future partner, that's going to, like, a lot of that is going to be replicated. At the same time, we can transcend those patterns. We can grow as humans. Like, we are never stuck. So there is and I think every generation can be better and better. I'm sure my children are going to improve on a lot of the mistakes that I made. I want to empower them also to, like, question me, be maybe critical of me, like see that I mess up often. But going back to the partner choice, there's one other element I would add that's become like so important for me. I didn't realize it when I was choosing my husband. I think subconsciously I did. I would say, like, pay really close attention to what the presence of the other person does to your nervous system, and choose somebody who calms you, like who co-regulates you. Because ultimately the energy that you want in your home is like of calm, safety, kind of soothing energy. And a lot of people, maybe from dysfunctional homes, maybe also because like you watch like teenage dramas on Netflix, a lot of girls, they go for the guy who is like the troublemaker, right? Who is the leather jacket on a motorcycle, and drama follows him. He's the dangerous guy. And that's not a good partner choice. Because usually those personality traits that attract you to him are not like long-term sustainable, like family building.
What is the attraction there then?
The danger, like that he's so strong, that he's so strong that you think he's gonna like be really good at protecting you, maybe. But if there's like too much instability in that man, and you're not experienced yet to navigate that, so I would go for the man who calms my nervous system, because I'm kind of like high strung a little bit. I'm like high energy person. And just when I come home and my husband is there, he's not even like doing anything, saying anything to me, I just naturally like my heart rate goes lower. Like I just chill. So that is the alchemy between two people that is just beyond anything.
Interesting. Something you said then about the what's passed on to you through your relationship with your kids and a relationship with your father and your mother, etc. It's true. You made a good point there that it's not all bad. And I'm thinking of the case of abuse in general, that when someone abuses their children, like in almost all instances, they were abused.
Yeah.
But not all abusers, in fact, only a very small proportion of people that are abused go on to be abusers. So the majority of people, this apparently, the majority of people are dealing with this problem or this trauma. But, if you are an abuser, it's because you were abused, Yeah. So it's true, because otherwise, the crazy people would never get married and have kids, would they?
Right. But it is, I think it is very, very difficult to transcend those patterns. It is possible, but you have to do like a lot of inner work, because we are made to like replicate what we lived in our childhood. If that was abuse and totally dysfunctional families, then the easiest path is to replicate it. The more difficult is to tread the path untrodden, right? And try a different approach. And you have to look, probably that's a lot of trauma work there. But, we're seeing it done like always. You have your like amazing people that tell you stories of horrible childhoods. I would think it's the minority. I think a lot of the times these cycles are repeated. And you're absolutely right that every abuser usually was abused, because I believe that people are born good and they don't want to hurt other people. But if something is done to them, that inherent like goodness can be damaged, not broken forever, but like strongly damaged. And it is hard. I think
I don't know where I heard this, but I'm sure that is a truism, that the majority of people do not become abusers.
But then wouldn't that trait like die out in the population like over
time?
It does. Like, there would be like no abuse.
No, but if it didn't, but the other way around, if abusers always abused,
not
then
always,
it would end up being everyone in the end, wouldn't it? It's not the other way around. The other way around, it stays at a small level, which is probably what it is. Like say physical abuse.
I don't know. It's also like how you define physical abuse. Like, for example, there was like a questionnaire recently in the Czech Republic. Survey is the word I'm looking for. And it asked, here in Czech Republic, how many people are you okay with like smacking your kids? Is that acceptable? And like 2/3 of people said yes. To me, that's abuse, and it's totally normalized abuse. So it means like physical violence is present in your family, right? And again, the argument is, well, I got slapped as a kid and I turned out okay. So without any awareness in that will be replicated. And I would wager that it's like probably a majority, like in the UK also, like people just still think that smacking a kid is good for them.
Well, it depends, because sometimes, and men know this, physical violence is the answer. Like, I'm not sure it is with your kids, but there are some effed up kids out there who, attack their parents with knives and stuff.
Probably effed up by the parents.
Yeah, sure.
But like, what are you supposed
to do at that point? I mean, I'm trying to justify. I don't obviously smack my kids. It's a terrible strategy, because number one, how unfair is that? Like they're tiny compared to you, and number two, it just doesn't do anything. It
does the opposite.
But I could imagine that if it had got that bad, then probably I would use physical violence, if you know what I mean. Because put it this way, right? With my children, if something gets out of control, if I shout at them, that you could hear a pin drop for an hour, and they do exactly what they're told at that point. You know what I mean? And that's not physical violence, but that is a very stern, loud, big bloke's voice telling stop, and everything stops at that point. And that's I think it's quite important, because, I think in your case, you probably come at it slightly more subtly.
Usually if I like raise my voice and I shout at my kids, they will like shout back and they will like run out of the room, slam the door. They're not having it. They're not having it.
Mine don't. Yeah. But then again, they might if my wife shouted at them.
Yeah.
But my role has always been the buck stops here.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, we don't have any problems. We don't have any major problems, because if a problem arises, the buck stops with me.
So let's say the scenario where like your kids are not doing what you want. When you were a kid, like how would you want that situation to be handled? Like, did you want your dad to shout at you?
I mean, no. But
I know that my dad shouted.
I think it was fair. Like, all I ever wanted, and I got it, was fairness. Like, like, for example, I never say because I said so. Mm-hmm. I said, and a number of times I've said, like, for example, with regards to phones, like, they're not allowed phones. As it stands, they won't be allowed phones till they're 18. And I've said that.
Okay.
And I've said, unless you can convince me, you've got to give me a solid reason why this is necessary. And she's done well, actually. She's actually come up with one that I'm trying to solve at the moment, which is, I want to take photos and I want to be able to look through my photos like all my friends do. And like, I'm a former photographer, so I get that. And I'm like, okay, and then I'm like, good point. All right, I can work with that. This is the and I can get her an old phone and she can use it. But now I've got to but you're not having any apps on there. You're not having any of the, But part of me sees that as the slippery slope. And, because once that phone's in your hand, what I'm trying to stop happening is the attention to go to the phone to exist at such a young age. 16, 18 maybe, I can see that that's okay. But you need a foundation of not going to your phone every time you feel uneasy or like, as I was talking to someone the other day, trauma causes this. Like, when you feel a traumatic feeling, you look for a distraction.
Absolutely.
And everyone now is going to their phone. Right?
You're a number, yeah. So
right.
With
Okay, it's this addiction. And my belief is that if I can train them to go to themselves, by the time they're 18, it just become normal. And sure, I didn't have a phone till I was whatever, in my 20s.
I was going to say that. I lived majority of my life without a phone, and I have a phone addiction.
Right. Yeah, I don't have a phone addiction, though. It depends on how you define it.
Yeah, how you define it, yeah.
But put it this way. If I'm on Instagram and I'm scrolling and I'm conscious of myself, I'm going, what are you doing? Then I have a choice to put it down. Mm-hmm. Whether or not I put it down, that's different, because that's something I need to deal with. But most people don't even have that they don't even have that conversation with themselves. And check this out. This is astonishing, right? My eldest daughter's just started secondary school, and one of their first lessons in, I don't know what subject it was, the teacher asked them to get all their phones out. And this is a class of about 30 kids. And my daughter and one other girl, there was only two that didn't have phones. Bearing in mind, this is age 11, 10, 11. And then they said, right, get out, put your screen time. Like on a phone, you can see how much you've been on it.
Yeah.
Some of the kids at 11 were having like 12 hours per day. She, and she said, some people on the group chat, 3 a.m., there's a group chat. It was like, what the fuck? 11-year-old kids. So obviously a lot of parents out there are just not even thinking about this thing in the slightest. Mm-hmm. And maybe I'm going too far. Maybe I'm going too far the other way to correct it. Mm-hmm. But I can't help thinking that we did all right. And I think we'd be a lot worse now if we hadn't grown up with them. I do. I think we'd be like on it all the time. Like, I use it in a much more functional way than in an addictive way. Like, when I'm going to Twitter, it's to either find out the news or to post something for my business or something. Sometimes, like at the end of a hard day, I don't drink alcohol, so I won't have a drink, but I might have a scroll. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. You get the same buzz out of it.
Yeah, it's a dopamine for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Technology, I mean, it's a huge topic. What if I said to you that, how is your daughter going to learn to regulate herself if you don't even let her try?
Well, she does in other ways. So, for example, good example, the other night when they had that big party at ours, first big party at ours, I said, I'm going to bed. You need to take your friends into the tent and you can do whatever you want. And that's it. I went to bed. I didn't even listen out. I put some headphones on, went to sleep. Everything was fine. You know, she is, like I say, I'll go back to what I said earlier. My strategy with my kids is to create a set of boundaries and then slowly remove them one by one as they prove themselves. So sure, I could say to her, look, here's a phone, but you're not allowed to go on social media. But you know, that she would do it actually. But the point is, why do you need a phone then? You know, the phone is the device that allows you to get a dopamine hit whenever you want. It's like a vape. Yeah. It's like you're carrying a vape around, and when you want a vape, you want some nicotine, you do it. Yeah. I don't think 11-year-olds should be messing with shit like that. I think that's really dangerous, you know.
I think that, so here's the thing. I think something, you think something, but the truth is we don't know, because this technology is so new that nobody really knows what it's going to do long term to kids' brains to have exposure to it for hours on end. And it could be fine, maybe not, but we don't know. And I'm trying to approach it from this little humble perspective, where I even had a conversation with my daughter about it, and I said, I have no idea if it's okay for you to be on it 1 hour a day or 3.5 hours a day or 45 minutes. And nobody knows. So because she got an iPhone for her 10th birthday. So I said, let's approach it with caution, you know, use it like when you need to. I trust you to make good choices. And I also trust you to recognize when it's a little too much. And at night, let's put it away, both you and I. All right. Same rules for me, because I know looking at my phone at night is not good for me. It affects my sleep. And that's how we've done it. And there's no like hard rule to it. I'd never even said when like night kind of starts, but I kind of like let her just mess with it and find out. And I also create an environment where there's things that she enjoys more. Like she enjoys above all playing with her friends. Her friends are always coming over. And when her friends are over, they run around in the yard and there's not a phone in sight. And they're building teepees and like messing in mud. Now we have a puppy, you know. So I think children who are on the phone for 12 hours a day, the phone's not the problem. The family environment is the problem. Like how come there's nothing more interesting to do? Like phones ultimately, they're cool, but interaction with humans and like building with your hands and like living your life, it's always better, and it's better for your body. And I try to like always, especially with girls, I find it so important to like take them back to their body. Like, how's your body feeling? Are you full after this dinner? Does your body tell you that you need something else? How are your eyes feeling after you look at this phone for so long? Kind of tired, mom. Yeah. So try to do a little shorter tomorrow. What do you think? Yeah, makes sense. You know, have it like a dialogue, and also have it be a work in progress and like learn, because I don't have the answers.
The problem with phones, though, and social media in particular, is the phone's going to beat you. The algorithms on Instagram are fine-tuned to trigger dopamine in you, which is a very strong feeling, and you can't outcompete them. You have to learn to basically stop. Self-control. You basically have to learn self-control. Yeah, but kids don't necessarily understand that unless they're kind of informed and shown, look, this is a terrible idea. You know, I remember there's an episode of Joe Rogan's podcast where they were talking about it, and he said, look, and my son's the same. He's so attracted to video games, much more than my daughters. It's like he can't stop thinking about them. He can't stop, you know, like, you know, and on this episode, Rogan said something like, you know, imagine you become you play video games for years and years and years. What have you got to show at the end of that time? Absolutely nothing, unless you're one of the very small minority of people that end up becoming professional game players. Imagine what you could have done. Because there are kids out there on video games a lot. Mm-hmm. Now imagine if they did something in the real world. Just any skill. But the skill you have at the end of a childhood of playing video games is non-existent. It's nothing. All right, maybe there's a bit of like, you get good at reacting to shit and stuff. But that sounds like cope to me, because you can learn that anywhere in the real world. You go and learn how to karate, and you would soon learn about watching for things and, you know, and being sharp-witted and stuff, you know.
I would go back again to what I said before. If a child is like only playing video games all day, the video game is not the problem. It's the environment they're living in that's the problem. There's not enough other stimuli, and you can provide other stimuli as a parent, and to counteract that. I do think we can beat the algorithm if we prioritize connection with our children, because they want to connect with a parent more than anything, especially as a young one, because that is survival, right? That is, again, like bottom of Maslow's pyramid, survival, safety, connecting with a parent. But also, that being said, I have a really good case study from my friends in the US. They grew up in Kentucky. They're twins out of a family of 5, and they grew up like totally unschooled. And when they were 13 or 14, the two boys, the two twins, they become like obsessed with computers. But not computer games. They became obsessed with Blender, which is this 3D modeling software. It's open source. It's really cool. And they said they literally spent 8 to 10 hours a day on their computer. And their parents were such like ideologically like unschoolers, like let them be, that they let them do it. So they're like, for 5 years, all we did was like 3D modeling. And Jonathan, one of them, he wouldn't mind me mentioning it, he became like a recognized expert for Blender, started a company. His brother started a plugin company for WordPress. This was like 15 years ago. Sold it for like 7 figures, you know, walked away. That was their expertise. That was their passion. And parents let them. So I think if you let kids like follow their passion, if they know what their passion is, and I understand your point, yeah, like video games are a little bit dumber than that. But if that's truly what you're doing and it's not something creative, then I would question as a parent, like, what are we doing in this family? What do I do with my time? What am I showing my kid that is a valuable use of time? Because kids will always like subconsciously like replicate. Am I looking at my phone all day? And if the parents are, then the kid does the same thing. Then like there's nothing wrong with a kid. It's just doing all that it knows.
I've tried, funnily enough, I've tried that one during lockdowns. The very first time when everyone got locked down and they were doing online school. It was like, it was annoying because it meant they had to go on screens. You know what I mean? Like, and we had a bit of a no screen policy. So I tried that with my daughters. I tried getting them into the one where it's an operating system that the kids can learn. I forget what it is. But you can create programs quite simply and yeah, they had no interest in it at all. They didn't try. But funnily enough, I was that kid as well. Like I spent hours and hours of time on a computer when I was a kid. They were the first home computers. It was called a ZX81.
Okay.
Do you ever remember those?
I didn't have those, but I had like something similar. Like,
right, there was that and something called a ZX Spectrum, and it used BASIC, which was the operating system. And I learned BASIC, and I created my own video games. I didn't really play video games. I created my own video games, but I remember my mum being worried about me because I was just sat in my room the whole time playing creating video games.
And your mom worried?
I think she said I can distinctly remember her coming into my room saying, because even on a hot sunny day, you should be outside and stuff. And I kind of empathize with that side of it. But it's different to playing video games. Video games turn you into a zombie, whereas creating a video game really, like learning, like check this out as well. I remembered this the other day. This is so funny. So obviously there was no online back then. So and the only way that you could learn BASIC was basically to buy a book or a magazine about it, right? And ZX81s had a number of magazines. It was like ZX81 Weekly or something, you know. And I was writing programs. And so when you hit a problem and you had an error, it was very difficult to work out what you did wrong because there was no internet. And I used to write letters to ZX81 Weekly and then look in the magazine the next week to see the answer.
That's amazing.
I know, but it's just what a sign of the times, though. But anyway, from that experience, I can tell the difference in my kids between, or even in video games, if they're playing three of them all playing the same game on the screen versus one of them sitting there just playing an online game.
That's very true. I can attest to that, yeah. Because a lot of the time my daughter will play Roblox, which you can play with your friends, connect, and they also like talk to each other at the same time. And I always feel like that's more like a high value activity.
Yeah, but I'm talking about being in the same room, though.
Even in the same room, yeah.
Like when my kids, my son last year got a Xbox for Christmas. It was so funny when he had absolutely no idea, because we're so against Xboxes, but they're only allowed to play it on Saturday night. Basically, we have film night on a Saturday night, and I was thinking about it, and I thought, wait a minute, they sit and watch telly for 3 hours on Saturday night. Wouldn't it be better if they were playing a video game? Actually, if I trade off there, and it's turned out, because we only allow them to have like multiplayer video games, but not online multiplayer, but in the room.
Okay.
So there's 3 controllers, all of them together, laughing their heads off, having a stupid
That's
time.
Fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's like very different than what you describe, where kids are just like scrolling on TikTok or Instagram, the Reels, for hours, because I think to a certain extent, it is also a coping mechanism where we want to disassociate from the world. Like it's an escape. Like you said, I've had a rough day. I just want to fire up and like scroll through my Reels. And I do that too. It's again, like numbing, disassociation. Instead of having that glass of wine in the evening, I also don't drink, by the way. So I also sometimes default to that, and like recognizing that is huge. And I think it's also a good conversation starter for the kids. Like, what do you use your phone for? What are the purposes? And do you know what an algorithm is? Do you know how that works? Do you know that what happens to like when you choose a reel and you like it? Do you know there's somebody on the other end like collecting all this data? I think those are like great lessons that we can open, and not from a place of judgment. Why are you on that again? Because then obviously if you villainize it, they will like tend to hide it from you, or then do it all the more when you're not home, etc. But if you make it into an open conversation and also see like their input, like why are they on it? What did they get out of it? What do they like? It's interesting to learn all that.
But as a distraction, if you go back to the kind of idea of trauma and addictions basically being distractions from trauma. Is that right? Is that what you believe?
I would agree with that.
I only heard that one recently, but it's a good way of describing it, isn't it?
I heard addiction is the opposite of connection. So if you're disconnected or family from the world, like isolated, then you'll gravitate to the thing that gives you that fulfillment, right? Which is the booze or the drugs or the pornography. You're looking for that kick where it was not given to you, filling a void.
What I notice about phones, especially in the family environment, is they increase isolation. And that's really common. So everyone's sitting around the dinner table, all talking and having, and there's a lot of chatter and that. And if a phone appears, or especially if more than one people have a phone, everyone disperses off and does their own thing. And those things are where I really home in on them and say, no one's doing this.
Yeah,
if you pick up mum's phone or whatever. Same with if you're in front of the telly, if we're all watching TV together, that's what we're doing. We're not all of us on phones in the same room. It's different. This is why I'm always struggling to even let a phone get into their hand, because they will, within seconds, you just default to this. I'm now in this little world, and I'm not here. And actually, there are better. Like we used to do it with a book, I suppose, didn't we? And, that was our version of that. Well, me when I was a kid, because there was none of that stuff.
And when book print first became mainstream, the old farts used to say, "Oh, the kids nowadays are just going to be looking into books, and they're not going to be doing anything useful." Like, I think there's also like fear that comes with the new technology, and I think that I'm willing to admit to myself, like, yeah, I am maybe like a little old for some of this stuff that's happening. Like, I don't understand that kids want to like buy a sword that they will only use in their game and pay for it with real dollars. Like, I'm not in the digital generation, and maybe I'm also fearful of that because it's still a little bit unfamiliar to me.
I get that, because you can buy and sell that sword. That's the beauty of it.
Cool.
I'm all for that.
So the
no, I get
trade.
It. Well,
yeah.
Bitcoin doesn't exist, does it? It's like, but you feel extreme ownership over it.
Yeah.
I mean, the only difference with those swords is that they're on the ledger is in the game, and there's nothing.
That's true.
But you can still buy and sell them. I mean, you can do all kinds of things in games which can teach your kids good business and entrepreneurial skills. And
that's a bit. And if you can find like positives about everything. I mean, with a TikTok, you can at least like have that conversation about it, and even say, I don't totally know how to approach it. I'm not kidding. Like, let's figure out some rules maybe, and the same rules will apply to me because I also benefit from those rules. If I reduce my phone use by an hour every day, what would happen? I would probably like be better off for sure. But how I recently knew that I'm doing okay, my daughter and I have been reading Lord of the Rings, the greatest book ever written, right? We can all agree. And she always preferred reading in the evening when I asked her, hey, do you want to watch a show? Do you want to play a game? Do you want to read another chapter? Read another chapter always. So if you provide these activities that are so enticing to the kids, as an alternative.
But I would say that what she's signaling to you, the question is not, do you want to read Lord of the Rings? It's, do you want to spend some time with me?
I agree. That's a big part of it.
I think that they don't care what you're reading. Because I remember that viscerally as a kid. You can read me anything. I don't care. I just want to fall asleep knowing you're sat there or you're close by or something like that. And that's a real life childhood experience that never leaves you.
Of course. So we're back to like the connection with a parent. It's everything. That is the antidote to all the modern plagues. Just us being there for our kids, not letting any middleman get between that. Because if you don't in the early childhood, that's the strongest foundation they will have their whole life.
I think it's a good way to end. That was a fuck the state ending, wasn't it?
Right.
Don't let anything get between you and your children. I think let's leave it on that. Pavla, thanks, mate. That was a brilliant conversation. I like talking about stuff like that. Don't get to talk about it that much, but I appreciate your time and your insights. It's super interesting.
So fun.
And let's do it again in another year.
Agreed. That's a deal.
All right.